So welcome to the webinar from JPassion.com on Java Development Tools course. So today's topic is Nexus. So here we covered Maven Basics and Maven Advanced during the past 2 weeks, and Nexus is actually the last topic that we are going to cover in relation to Maven. So let's go to the presentation. We'll talk about what is and why Nexus, and we'll talk about repository server types, and we'll see how you can interact with proxy repository, why it's actually in fact useful, and then we'll see how you can use Nexus repository server by configuring your Maven. So what is and why usage of Nexus? So Nexus basically provides a private repository server. So your builds can download dependencies from Nexus, and then you can also publish artifacts from Nexus repository server. So the reason that you might want to have your own repository server is because a central repository server might be pretty busy, and so it might not be actually responding to your request. It could be slow, it could be disconnected through the network because of network problem. So maintaining your own repository server provides some stability for your development. In fact, you can have a complete control of your repository server. So this is a continuation of why Nexus is in fact useful. So it could speed up your build, and we'll talk about how much speed advantage you can have using Nexus, and you can also save bandwidth because you're not really going to the public server through the slow public network. Easy the burden of Maven Central. Maven Central is actually being requested from many users, so usually it's pretty busy. Gain predictability and scalability. Again, depending on Maven Central, which is a public server, might not actually give you a predictable build environment. And control and audit dependencies and release. So you have good control in terms of what is being requested from the build environment. Deploy third-party artifacts. You can actually deploy whatever artifacts of your choice to your Nexus repository server, and you can also collaborate with internal repositories, meaning you can have a chain of Nexus servers. So let's talk about the repository types. So the hosted repository type is used to publish your own artifacts. Proxy repository is a proxy of remote repository. So as a default, by default, Nexus ships with the 3 configured proxy repositories. One is Apache snapshots and Codehouse snapshots, and lastly the Maven Central. So these remote repository servers are proxied through Nexus. So instead of actually going to this public repository server, it will actually check your Nexus server first, because your Nexus will actually provide a proxy repository. Virtual repository type works as a bridge between repository types, maybe Maven 1 to Maven 2 and Maven 2 to Maven 1. So mostly you are going to use these 2 repository types, hosted repository and proxy repository. Repository group is basically combines multiple repositories and provides a single interface. So if you want to actually group a set of repositories into a single group, and that single group could be actually referenced as a group name. So let's see, I am unable to hear anything. Can you hear? People can hear? Yeah, I think people can hear. So both, I think it's actually an issue on your end. So, all right, moving forward. So I'm going to just send a message to support. All right. repository group, as I said, is a group of repositories and actually can be referenced through a single repository group. So here, this is in fact the Nexus server, and the Nexus server comes with the default public group, and that contains this set of repositories kind of built in. Okay. All right, interacting with a proxy repository. So here we are going to actually see how much advantage you get in terms of speed and in terms of bandwidth. So let's say this is the case where the artifact you're looking for is not in local cache and it's not in proxy, so it's going to actually go to remote server like a Maven Central. So let's talk about each of these steps. So first, Maven will check local repository. That's step number one, and it's not there. So it's going to actually go to proxy repository of your Nexus server. And Nexus server actually maintains proxy cache. Okay, so we'll actually see what this proxy cache is in your local file system later on when you do the hands-on lab. And so in this case, it's not there. So this proxy repository server will actually go to the public server and grab the artifact. So it will request the artifact from remote repository server, meaning public repository server. Then it will store that artifact in the proxy cache. That's the step number 5. And then then it will be stored in the local repository. Okay. Okay, so now this is okay. By the way, if you are doing all this, it might take about 800 milliseconds, okay, because it has to go through all the way to the public server. Now, if you have artifact in next server, so this is the scenario where you don't have it in the local repository, so it's going to go to Nexus repository server, and it finds it in the proxy cache, and it will be returned. So in this case, it will take just 80 milliseconds because it doesn't have to go to the public server. In terms of bandwidth and speed, okay, so we just talk about the speed. So if you have something in your artifact in your local repository, then it's going to take just 15 milliseconds. If you don't have it, then it has to go to Nexus repository server, then it will take 80 milliseconds. Now, if Nexus repository cache doesn't have it, then it will go to the public server. It will take 80 milliseconds, as we just talked about. Now, in terms of actually speed, you can think of the speed between your your workstation to your repository server, Nexus repository server, might be about 1 gigabytes per second, because they are actually in the same local network. The public network is about, let's say, 2 megabytes per second. So let's assume this is the case. So in terms of saving time, so if you are required to go to the public server, suppose if you're actually building with the 200 repository interactions, and then you're talking about 200 times 800 milliseconds, and you're talking about 2 minutes and 40 seconds for building your application. With a proxy, you're talking about 200 times 80 milliseconds, so that you're talking about 16 seconds. So you're talking about 10 times speed advantage when you have a Nexus server serving your development environment. Now, so this is basically, the another perspective. So if your build takes without the proxy 2 minutes and 40 seconds and with proxy 16 seconds, and if you build 20 times a day, then, we're talking about 53 minutes versus 5 minutes. In terms of bandwidth, again, we're talking about the, without the proxy, we're talking about 50 gigabytes over 2 megabytes. So you're talking about 7 hours. And with a proxy, we're talking about 100 megabytes over the 2 megabytes per second. So you're talking about 50 seconds. So, this is the basically divided by 100 megabytes by 2, and this one 50 gigabytes by 2. All right, so you can see you're also having bandwidth advantage and the speed advantage. All right, so moving forward. configuring your Maven environment to use Nexus Server. So you are going to set your settings.xml file in your home directory, M2 and the M2 home directory and M2 and settings.xml file. This is actually Maven configuration per user. So you go to your home directory and then go to .m2 and then settings.xml file. So here you're actually setting your mirrors. So here the way that you're going to set in your mirrors is that for whatever repository server of your choice, so that is specified repository ID like a central, okay? I want to use this URL as a mirror. So this is how you're going to actually set your mirror, okay? All right. Now, in terms of actually using Nexus, what you can do is that you are going to use, you actually set Nexus, ID is Nexus. And mirror of, that means any any remote repository I want to use Nexus public group. Okay, so this is what you can specify. Any access I want to actually use Nexus server public group. Okay, so this is how you can actually set your the settings.xml file. All right, so that is the end of the presentation. So let's actually take a look at the hands-on lab. So exercise 1 is basically download and login to Nexus server. So you're going to actually go to this website and you're going to just download Nexus open source version. Okay, so pro version is commercial, so you're going to just download it and it will download a zip file. Okay, and then you're going to unzip the file. Okay. And when you unzip the file, it will create the two directories. One is Nexus, excuse me, Nexus 2.0, and then it will actually have a SonarWorks. So let me actually go to Java Tools. When you unzip it, it will create these two directories, Nexus and version, and then Sonar type work. Okay. So this Sonar type work is actually personal, the directory, and this is where the proxy cache is going to be maintained. Now, if you go to this Nexus 2.03 and then go to bin, then go to JSW, then you see all your machine platform. Okay. So you're going to just choose, in my case, I'm going to just choose Windows x86-32. And then you can install and start. Okay, so install for Windows is actually installing Nexus Server as a Windows service. Okay, and that is the only way that you can actually use Nexus Server. You cannot just start it. So you have to install as a service and then you can start it. So here, I can actually install it. Oh, looks like it's already installed. So I'm going to actually uninstall it first. Uninstall it. And then I'm going to install it. So it is installed as a Windows service, and then we can start Nexus. Okay, so it started, and once you start it, then you can actually go to once you start it, and you can go to this the URL. Okay, so you're gonna see this Sonar type UI. Okay, and so here you can log in. So here the default login is admin and admin 1 to 3. Okay. All right. So now you can see repositories. Okay. So this is a public repository. So if you take a look at public repository, you can see the way it's configured is a set of. Yeah, actually, it's a default. Looks like I actually moved around. So it used to be as a default. It will have this and this and this. Okay, so these are the collections. So public, the repository group is a collection of these repositories. Okay, and these are still available, so you can move these things to over here. All right, so that is, oops. So we just okay. So now, as I said before, you are going to see Nexus 2.0 and Sonatype work directory, and this is where the Nexus binary is actually located, and Sonatype work this is where the proxy cache is going to be maintained. Okay. So in fact, if you do tree Sonatype work, you will actually see the bunch of information. Now the storage, this is representing the proxy. So whatever artifact that is actually downloaded from remote server will be maintained in the proxy cache, and that is represented by this storage. Okay. All right. Exercise 2 now is going to configure Maven to use Nexus. Okay. So here, so this is the way that you are going to change your settings.xml file. So here, what I'm saying is that, for any remote server access, so I use the star, I want to use a public group. Okay, so that's basically what you're talking about. Okay. And and this is actually central, and we're actually kind of using this the dummy URL. So there is nothing like the / central. So the whatever that goes to here will be kind of failed. Okay, so it's just kind of for testing. And this is in fact example of using active profile. We talked about the profile last week, right? So this is the way that I can actually use. I'm actually activating this profile. Okay. So now you are going to actually run the Maven clean and install on the sample application that is provided, the Pet Clinic SDK. And it will fail because it couldn't find, it couldn't actually find the repository. Okay, so if you take a look at the Pet Clinic SDK's pom.xml file, it will actually go to the repository server that is actually this one. So this is pom.xml file. So it's actually going to this location to get Spring Framework artifacts. Okay. Now because our proxy cache doesn't have it, it will actually fail. So it just doesn't find any of these jar files. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to add the proxy repository. So we're going to click Add and Proxy Repository. And then you're going to add Spring 3 release and Spring 3 name. And then you're going to actually provide this the repository server location. Okay, that is in fact there are actually 4. So these are all different locations. Okay, so we want to add each of these directories as a separate proxy server, proxy repository type. Okay, now you can actually have a single repository type that contains all, but for this exercise you can actually add each of this. Okay, so I'm adding proxy repository, and I'm basically specifying the first one and the second one and the third and fourth. So once I've done that, my public repository will actually, then you're going to actually, have the Spring 3 repositories actually as part of the public group. Okay. So next time when you're actually running Maven install, it will actually find, these repository server types. And again, if it doesn't have it, and this repository type will actually go to the server and grab it. Okay. So this time it should work. Okay. So that's pretty much what I have today. So let me just